Hey, Motorman here, and I'm here with Bubba Boswell of Boswell's Harley Davidson. And, we're doing the best we can with this Zoom call, but mainly you should be able to hear the voice, at least the best we can do right now. So, your dad originally opened the dealership in 1953, is that right?
November 1st, 1949.
49. And at that time,
Yeah.
did you ever talk to him about I mean, you weren't even born then, so did you ever talk to him about the dealership or anything as you were growing up, like how he got into the business, etc.?
Oh man, uh, my whole family, my whole life, as a childhood, ever since I can remember, had to deal with motorcycles. I didn't know anything else.
All right. And what age did you start working at the dealership?
I sold my first motorcycle at 12 years old. It's a true story. I sold it at 12.
So,
My father thought I was pestering a customer about buying this motorcycle, and and he came up to the customer and he apologized for his son um, talking to him and maybe interrupting him and confusing him. And all I know is remember is the guy looked right at my father and he said, "Well, who do I pay?" He sold me the bike, and he bought the bike. 1972 Baja 100.
so you were basically brought up in the dealership,
Yeah,
and
you can say that.
on a regular basis, did you start working there at any particular time, like you were 19 or 20 or?
I worked during the summer out of school. Always worked the entire summer. Any days off from school, I worked at the dealership. I love washing motorcycles. And, you know, I like being a detail guy. Maybe what I do when I retire is I just wash motorcycles.
But do you remember particularly when the AMF years when AMF takes over in 1969 and then in 81 AMF sells it back to 13 investors? Do you remember that pretty well?
Oh yeah, very well, very well. Yeah.
And were you kind of, the dealers, were they kind of scared, wondering if this was going to work out for them?
We knew it would all work out. I mean, we were totally convinced it worked out. We believed in the leadership at Harley, the new leadership at Harley Davidson. Um, that even the leadership during the AMF days was not terrible. It was pretty good. It kept the company rolling. And then the new leadership, led by Von Beals and others, uh, they were just a rock solid team that really loved Harley Davidson and loved the culture and knew what it could be, and they did a fantastic job of leading us all through some difficult times.
And then in 1984, they introduced the Evo motor with the FXST model. And was that a big deal at that time? Because I know there was quality control issues under AMF, and I guess between 81 and 84 you kind of straightened that stuff out. But then you came out with the new Evo motor, and did sales really start to take off at that time?
Well, it took it a little bit to get going. Just to be really about the quality. I believe the 1983 shovel heads were the best shovel heads they ever built. I mean, those are really good engines. So when they quit building the shovel head, and the last of the shovels were 84 in the electric line, they went to the Evo, and the Softail was a hit right off the bat. Then brought in the others, the FXR and the FXRS were a very good motorcycle, a good hit. It started resonating to a lot of customers. Brought in the wide glides, were still hot. Just a lot of things started picking up momentum. You know, starting around 1986. I'd say the year would be 1986 was a good year, and it started picking up momentum after that.
And then in about 1990, it seemed to me, anyway, from what I've read, and well, I was I was around then, of course, and into motorcycles by that time. But it seemed like they introduced the Fat Boy, and that really went crazy. And I think it became the number one seller after Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator movie.
Oh yeah, I mean, Fat Boy was an instant success. It was just a cool motorcycle, but there was a lot of success. I mean, the Springers came out. You know, the Softail Springer came out with a huge success. And then they brought the Heritage Springers out later, and those were a big success. The Heritage Softail Classic in '86. I mean, just so many bikes were coming in different configurations. And Willie G. Davidson and Louis Netz, they just did a phenomenal job of listening to the customers and bringing heritage back into the Harley, and the customers just ate it up.
And at that time, did the supply wasn't able to meet the demand? Is that, I mean, how tough was it to get motorcycles?
Oh, it was a year or two wait there at one point. It was totally out of control. You just couldn't get the bikes. It got a little better towards the end of the year. End of the '99 was a good year, getting more bikes. But it was pretty tough all the way through the 100th anniversary of 2003, getting motorcycles. It got better, but it was never a full bore, until the recession came in '09. Bikes were still pretty hard to get, and they were selling at record paces. I mean, just unbelievable. The sales were just off the chart at Harley, from Sportsters all the way up to the electric line and the Limited.
Well, I remember at least the situation down here in Florida back then was like there was a dealer in Clearwater, Fletcher's Harley Davidson. I think you said you knew them. And I remember you had to pay them $1,200 to put your name on a list to get a motorcycle. But that $1,200 didn't go towards the cost of the motorcycle. And then when the bike came in, you had to add, I think it was another $1,500 in accessories.
Oh, yeah, we did a deal. I can't remember the year. It was in the '90s. And we announced that we were going to start taking deposits for the new model year. And the new model year back then was, in August. And we announced it, and we had people camp out at the dealerships 3 days prior just to get their name on a list to buy a motorcycle.
That's because you had a certain allotment. In other words, you couldn't get as many as you wanted, so you were allowed a certain allotment. And if you can get people to put deposit on it, you could sell out your entire year's allotment in a couple of days. Is that how it worked?
I think we sold that year's allotment out in about a week.
Another thing that they were doing down here is you couldn't buy a Harley Davidson, a new Harley, unless you had a used Harley to trade in. Was it a similar situation in Tennessee?
No, we didn't do that. We were just buying bikes off the street and just having product on the floor. We do a lot of consignment sales. We were pretty creative to have motorcycles on the floor, something to sell. And, even went back and got some of the '70s models and the '80s and stuff. And, we would rework those and get them in good condition and put them up there to sell. So we were pretty creative to keep some sort of motorcycle on the floor for a customer to buy. But I want to tell you, it was difficult to do.
And I would imagine the dealers are begging Harley to make more motorcycles, but they just didn't have the capability of upping the production. Is that what it was?
No, they just did not have the capability of building that kind of bike at the quality they wanted, and the paint quality and everything it took. They just didn't have the facilities to do it.
And did you ever get the feeling that during these boom years that this was never going to end, that it was going to just keep going like that? Was that the sort of the attitude of the company, Harley Davidson, and the dealers?
No, we knew it would end at some point. We knew Harley would get their act together, and we knew it would at some point cool off. And I wouldn't say cool off. I mean, Harley was on a big roll all the way up to 2008. The only thing that kind of put the brakes to it was a recession. But but Harley did a really good job of managing inventory the best they could back then, and I give them a lot of credit for that. They did a really good job.
Now you're allowed a certain amount of motorcycles, and they go by how many you sell per year. Is that how that works? So if you sell 100 motorcycles a year, they're going to send you
Well,
100, or you could get more or
you
less.
know, back then, back then, in those days, you would have what they call a turn and earn. So as many as you could sell, they would replenish you that. And I think the number was plus 10%. So you would get an idea. Today it's a little different. It's very complicated on how you get motorcycles. It's based off, your market size and, your market potential. There's a lot of things that go in effect of how you get motorcycles today. It's rather complicated, and I'm really not smart enough to explain it to you. Well, it was pretty simple. The motorcycles could be had if you're willing to write a bigger check for it. And some dealers would just sell off their inventory, to people like Ross Meyer and others. And yeah, even me. I mean, I bought motorcycles and paid a big price for them to have inventory on the floor from dealers who were willing to part with it. So it was just what you had to do to stay in business and have product on the floor. It ain't that we were making a monster profit over on that. It's just what it took us to have product on the floor. We had to pay that price to have it.
So in other words, you would buy a bike from another Harley dealer and pay them over MSRP just so that you could have a bike in stock to sell.
Yes. Oh yeah, that was common practice.
Oh, I never realized that. You think as a customer that, well, the factory has a certain price and that's what you buy them for. But I guess if you don't have inventory to sell, you do whatever you can to get that inventory.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just you got to keep the doors open, and one dealer in a certain part of the country that didn't need the bike, or maybe there was something that another dealer would give up that he needs for that bike. I mean, there's a lot of dealer trading going on back then, as there is today. So, I mean, you're just trying to, put round pegs in round holes, and that was just one of the tools we had to do it.
Mm-hmm. And the location that you're at right now, that's not the original location?
No, the original location in Nashville, the location we're now was built in '72. It's had some additions, but the original location in Nashville is about 4 miles down the road.
So the place you're at now, how long have you been there?
It's 1972.
72. Yeah, that's quite a while for being in one spot. Do they have some kind of rule now that if you want to open a Harley dealership, it has to be near an interstate? Because I notice all the latest Harley dealerships are right off.
I wouldn't know. I think they just want you to have it in a desirable location. It doesn't have to be an interstate. Harley has they have a guidelines for what they want their stores to look like, and they give you a lot of leeway. The dealers has a lot of leeway, what he feels like his customers will like, what they feel comfortable in, and then Harley gives you gives you the parameters and different options to do that. But as far as the location, Harley works with the dealer pretty close to come up with the right location for everybody that works.
And what do you think that right now? Do you think that Harley is doing a good job of getting younger buyers in, or not so good a job? What's your feelings on that?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think Harley's doing as good as our competitors are. I mean, the younger buyers today are buying used motorcycles because of price or whatever reason. Maybe it's something they like that Harley don't build no more, so they buy that. But and then Harley has bikes that younger buyers like, and still for a lowrider S, lowrider STs, or just it's a phenomenal bike. It really resonates to a younger buyer.
With that, what would you say that your age of your customers range from?
Oh, they range from anywhere from 25 to 80. It just depends on what bikes are looking for. A 25-year-old, a 30 or 35-year-old is not going to buy a tri-ride or a trike, but another gentleman, is not going to come in and want to buy a Sportster or a Super Glide or something like that.
How is the 975 selling?
It's something new. It's a good motorcycle. It's replacing the old Evo Sportster, which has a monster following. You can look behind me. You'll probably see 2 or 3 of them behind me right now. I'm a Sportster fanatic. I love Sportsters. It's just going to take a while for it to catch on. But it's a good bike. I mean, it's not for everybody, but it's a good bike.
And what about the Sportster S? Has that been moving well?
The bike is sold better. It's a good bike. A very fast motorcycle. It's a unique bike. It's a true sport bike without a shadow of a doubt. Unique styling. It's one of my favorite of the two is the Sportster S. It's a pretty cool bike. But, I love a Pan America. I got one sitting right next to me right now. And I got about 7,000 miles on it. I love my Pan America. That, to me, may be one of the better Harleys they've built in a long time.
Do you do some off-roading with it?
I do some, but it's a heck of a highway bike. I mean, it's a great road bike. It's 5 motorcycles in one almost. I mean, I've ridden it, 1,000 miles, no problem. I've ridden in the dirt roads, no problem. In town, no problem. You can do whatever you want to do with the Pan America. If you want to be a sport bike, go ride a sport bike with it. I mean, it does virtually almost anything you want with a motorcycle. It's a great motorcycle, but keep in mind, Harley Davidson doesn't build bad motorcycles. There's not one bad bike Harley builds. They're all great bikes.
I've said that Harley Davidson makes the best, the state-of-the-art heavyweight motorcycles. And then, people argue with me. So, well, Hayabusa has got a lot more power. What, you're comparing apples to oranges. As far as heavyweight touring motorcycles, I don't think anything else compares.
Yeah, any Harley Davidson has what they call personality. Every one of them has a personality. There's all kinds of great motorcycles out there, but not many of them have a personality. You can say every Harley does.
Now, the last question: does Harley give you like a heads up on something that's coming out, and if so, are you able to talk about it? In other words, if there's another model coming out in the next few months, do they give you a heads up saying, hey, keep an eye, this is...
Well, everybody's, in today's world of the internet and spot photos and this, that, and the other, you always see stuff out there. I can tell you this, I do believe that you're going to see some really cool stuff really soon, and I think everybody's gonna like it.
Can you give
That's
us?
all I'm gonna say about it.
All right, I understand. Let's see. I think that's about it. And I really enjoy talking to you. You're a very knowledgeable guy, and having been in the business for so many years and being around it, you know what you're talking about. Oh, one more thing. Somebody told me to ask you about racing, and I think your wife mentioned that you're still racing motorcycles. Is that right?
Oh yeah, I still race motorcycles. I'm a hooligan rider. I race the hooligan series, and hooligan races, and I guess I'm just the world's oldest teenager. You go to hooligan racing. Hooligan racing is dirt track racing, flat track racing, and we're running Sportsters. I mean, we run heavily modified Sportsters, and we had a race the other day, and at an AFT event. AFT's letting some hooligan races go into the AFT series some this year. And, we're talking about, Harley Davidson and the Sportsters, and people think the Sportster's kind of a, obsolete bike. But, I was at the racetrack the other day, and I saw Sportsters take first, second, and third at Senoia, Georgia, and the 4th place bike was a KTM. I'm here whenever you want to talk. If you want to talk motorcycles, I'm your guy.
Okay, that's the same way I feel about it. All right, thank you very much, and ride safe.
All right, buddy. Have a great evening.
You too. Take care.
See you soon.